Hi, I'm Kevin. Welcome to Garden Hike. I wanted to share with you some raised bed self-watering garden planters I put together over the last year. Bit of an experiment for us. We're not completely finished with him yet. We haven't grown any produce, so we'll find out how that's going to go through this season. But one of the reasons we put him in, we had these spruce trees and ash trees that were taking pretty much all the moisture and nutrients. We also got our hands on some free lumber. Now, a raised bed self-watering planter, the idea behind it is you create a saturation point on the lower end. The soil is put on top and you get a wicking effect. Not only will the root system drive down, the moisture will wick back up. So you find that balance in between. Great way to collect snow that melts and rainwater. Let's go ahead and take a look at the project. Luckily, we got our hands on some free lumber. These are some old landscape bins here that they were dividers for landscape rock. So they were taken apart. We've got these planks here that they're 2 by 10 by 14 planks. And you know, lumber's expensive, so this is going to save us, I think, well over like $2,500 by doing this. So it's a good way to use some old repurposed lumber as well. We've also got access to these 1 by 4 boards. This is just a fir board. Scrap lumber in between nursery stock loads. They use it not only for dividing orders, but for stacking. So that's something we're going to use on the trim right here. And that's going to lock this whole box together by fastening those on. So it's a good part of the stabilization of the whole project. We're also going to be using some landscape fabric that we had for a water feature that we no longer needed it, and as well as this pond liner was part of that water feature. So there's some items that we could use up as well. For the purchased materials, drain tile was one of the more expensive items that we used, and drain tile is going to create the water area on the bottom of the boxes. Make sure you get drain tile that's got slits in it. There are drain tiles sold that's just, it's one long continuous pipe. So get the ones with the slits. Now, if you don't want to buy the landscape fabric, which is what's going to be your border between the soil and the water, just get the drain tile that has a sock on it already, and then you might be able to skip that step where you've got that fabric. There's a few little small hardware items like wood screws. We'll take a look at concrete rebar that we're going to use to position the boxes to the ground so they don't drift. And soil amendments. That's one of the final things that's going to be fairly expensive as well. We're going to go ahead and show you that we scraped off the top 6 inches where we're going to put the boxes. That's going to give us about 10 cubic yards, or about half of the overall soil volume we need. But we did bring in some pulverized topsoil. And for this project, we're going to be using pine bark nuggets, sphagnum peat moss. You could also use perlite, vermiculite, those type of things as well to create some air or pore space within your soil mix. This is the area then. It's about 100 feet long. The whole area is about 8 feet wide, maybe even a little bit more, 10 feet. But we're just going to use this section right here. We decided to go ahead and we scraped off that top 6 inches. And then we're going to stockpile that soil in 2 different areas here and reuse that when we fill the boxes. So we'll cut our costs down quite a bit by doing that. Here's one of those stockpiles right there. Now, one thing we did do, we left the pitch of the land. This is going to drain off naturally. We don't want to make it where we excavate in and we create an area where the water is going to stand or saturate in an area. Next step, we put in these string lines you can see here to give us pretty much, a straight area so it looks pleasing to the eye when we're all finished. We pretty much cut all the boards right on site there, just brought the generator and the saw over. Here's one of those stockpiles of soil right there. Now, putting the boxes together, I didn't use a lot of hardware because I knew I was going to be using those vertical boards around the edges. So we just used wood screws on these corner points right here. Here's a little bit of a video, shows kind of quick how we did that. We just spun them in, didn't take very long. Again, the boards are repurposed, so there wasn't always a square edge, made it a little bit more frustrating. You can see here we're drilling through vertically, and then we're going to pound rebar rods down through those holes, and that's what's going to give us the positioning into the ground. And that's going to keep that box steady enough. Also, once we add that soil, that much weight, those boxes are not going to move out of that area. I would suggest, if you aren't going to use those vertical boards to tie the whole box together, you might want to consider using lag bolts or something that's going to be a little bit longer bolt system going in there. And just one more photo of where we did go ahead and we drilled another hole in the top board where we had warp planks, and that helped position those boards together as well. And just before winter, we did get a few of the boxes built. Winter came and we had to pause until spring. Now I was going to go ahead and start filling these boxes before I put those vertical planks on. Decided that I didn't think those little wood screws on the corners was going to be enough as far as holding it together structurally. So we did go ahead, we used that scrap wood that we had free also, and we cut them into 18-inch lengths, and we went all the way around the boxes. It's going to look kind of an attractive look, you know, it's kind of a one of those pallet wall type looks. We are also, this summer coming up, we're going to put linseed oil on it. That'll give it a little bit of a preservative and kind of darken it up, make it look even a little bit more showy. Okay, next step, we did go ahead and we cut our rubber liners to size. You don't have to go real tight with it. You want to leave some slack because you can get expansion and contraction when it heats up. But before you put the rubber liner in, this is where we're going to put that fabric below. And one of the reasons we put it below and above, the below portion is to avoid punctures in that rubber liner. If you were to lay that rubber liner right on the ground, something sharp, you could puncture it, have a leak, and the whole project is, you know, it's no longer a self-watering bed. So there you go. We've got the fabric down here. We've got the rubber liners going in. And we've got our second boards we're putting on the top here. Now the drain tile, since you purchase it coiled, you might want to take it out of those coils, lay it out in the sun. That'll help you when you cut it. It won't want to kink and roll. We didn't do that, so I tried to put together this type of a board system that held them in place so they didn't, you can see where there's one here, so they weren't continually bending and pushing all the way. So we ended up using the brick pavers a little bit more than these boards. And there you go. That's just going to keep space between the drain tile, and that way you've got a better even wicking system. I'll just mention too, we had rains on and off as we were doing this project. You know, the project, like I say, took well over a year to finish between the seasons, but the bees really came in on this wet fabric. It was just a perfect area for them to get their water needs. I'd like to mention too, what are the reasons you would want a raised gardening bed? For us, obviously, we had free lumber, so that made it advantageous for us to do it. But one of the main reasons we did do it was we had that competition from spruce trees next to our garden. It's starting to take all the moisture and the nutrients. By building raised garden beds, you're also going to avoid compaction on the area. You're not going to be walking on that area anymore. You can control what nutrients you put in the soil more effectively. The pH can be controlled if you need to lower that or raise that a little bit more effectively. You can add amendments of different sorts to different boxes if you're trying to grow a more specific crop as well. Another great advantage in the spring is when that soil's above ground, it's going to warm up more quickly. It's going to give you that extended season. We started out hand mixing the soil, you know, by shovel, and I could tell that wasn't going to be the way to go. It was going to take, I'm guessing, boy, it was 8 to 10 hours per box and a lot of work. So we changed gears, was going back over to these soil piles, and I just took the bucket from the front end loader, laid out that soil, and then we started adding our amendments that way. Here we're cutting open the sphagnum peat moss, and it's just going right over the top of that soil that we started putting down. We decided to use pine bark nuggets as something that's not only organic, but it'll create some air space. I didn't want to spend the money on perlite or vermiculates. So that's I think is going to work pretty well. You can also use different composted wood mulch is common in a mix like that. So we'll just back that rototiller up, and we're just going to use that as our power mixer, save ourselves a ton of time. Look at that, that's probably at least 1 to 2 cubic yards of soil mixed up in just a matter of seconds. And then we came in with the front end loader, and we'll just scoop up our mix. And each time we grab it with the bucket, we're doing a little bit of an additional mixing. I hand shoveled it in at first, just to make sure when I dumped I didn't collapse or push those drain tiles over. I also didn't want to bury the little bricks. So now as we're filling, we're just going to take those brick spacers out. You can see I've got those brick spacers up here ready to move on down over to the next box. 3/4 of the mix was just that pulverized topsoil, something we purchased and what we had on hand from scraping it out. Then we used about 1/4 sphagnum peat moss, and then we also used some pine bark nuggets. All right, so now we've got the boxes are pretty much full as we go into winter. We never did get them planted out this season. You can see this is what they look like right now. So the project isn't completely finished. You know, we have a pretty good idea that we're going to have really good luck growing some plant material in there. Some of the concerns that we do have, though, in a box like this, you can have salts will build up by having no drainage. So when I mention those drains that I put in, we're going to be able to release all the water if we feel like we are getting a salt problem. I'm also a little bit concerned that we could get some water freezing in there. We are going to get water freezing. We could get some expansion. I hope I don't crack out some of those boards. We're going to find out there too. Whether or not we're going to get too saturated, get a mucky or even a smelly type thing, that's a concern on the bottom. Might force us to drain them a little more often than we want. The whole idea behind this, though, is just to collect water, rainwater and snow, so we don't have to irrigate. You can also go upwards of 2, 3, maybe 4 weeks as that water wicks from the bottom up the soil profile to keep your plants alive. So we're going to give you updates, you know, this season, how this goes. The other nice thing about boxes like this, we can eventually add some different hoops over the top, put either poly, frost cloth. You could even put some arching trellises. So this gives us a lot of options too in those raised beds. As I mentioned, we'll try to get you an update as soon as possible to see how this all played out. I appreciate you watching Garden Hike. We'll see you again next video.